Hi, in this video, I will go over details of a typical offer from a big tech company. I will use an Amazon as an example. I will base it on some of the sources I have personally, my personal experience as well, and the third-party website that I will share with you as well that has plenty of data and information about different compensations at different companies. So hopefully this information, all of the components of the offer, how to negotiate them, what do they actually mean, will set you in a better place for negotiating the details on your personal offer once you get it. All right, so let's take a look at some of the main components of the offer. They're somewhat similar between the top tech companies like Facebook, Google, or Meta, Google, maybe Netflix. So you get a base, so base salary. So the base salary is where Amazon is typically comes in very, very low versus a lot of other companies, but they try to compensate it with a higher grant for the RSUs, which is restricted stock units. And the reason for that is they want to promote ownership of the company so that individuals who work for Amazon work for the good of the entire company and appreciate the value of their grants a lot more, and thus make Amazon as a company a lot better, so that the stock of the company appreciates more as well. So anyway, so that's their philosophy. So their bases are usually lower than the competition, and then they try to compensate it with other components as well. And I'll go into some of the details there. There's also signing bonus. So a lot of the companies do have signing bonus. Like for example, Amazon uses signing bonus to compensate for a lower RSU vesting in the first and the second year. So after the first year, you typically get 5% and so on. And they are trying to compensate with a signing bonus. Typically, it's equal to the 15 or 20% of your entire RSU grants divided up to equal payments for the first year. That's typical. Again, it could be somewhat different in your case. And there's also a factor of where you are being hired, whether it's the premium market versus the standard market, etc. So that's where the components may look slightly different. And then there's also relocation assistance. Typically, that is offered for levels 6 and higher. Sometimes they do offer it for level 5 for engineering positions, especially if those are critical positions. The relocation assistance also has multiple levels in terms of the budget, how much money they're going to provide to an individual in the offer. Obviously, at a lower level, you get a less of an assistance. And then at the higher level, you get a pretty good assistance. And even at the lower level, that relocation assistance is just fantastic. It covers pretty much everything you need to be covered. And I'll share some of my personal experiences there as well. So I've gotten offers from Amazon twice. And from Facebook and from Microsoft and other companies. So I can share my personal experiences there. All right, so what do we have? Because we're using Amazon as an example, because it still hires quite a bit of engineers and has presence in multiple cities throughout the United States and Canada. I think it's going to be a fairly good example. And then a lot of the other companies are going to come somewhat close to it. Obviously, Meta, Netflix, Google, their offers are going to be higher, slightly, sometimes by like 15, 20% higher. And then some of the lower I guess companies or more mature companies that are not really tech, their offers are going to be a lot lower. And if you're looking for a startup, those are going to be completely different ball game, because each startup will have their own funding and their own philosophy on how they're going to compensate with equity versus cash. So anyway, so at L5, I think you could expect anywhere between 150 to 170 base salary, uh, which sounds a little bit lower, but when you factor in all the other components, the offer becomes very, very attractive as well. So at L6, it's 170 to 200. So L6 typically is a very experienced frontline manager who manages one or more engineering teams, usually not more than three. I haven't seen, while at Amazon, an L6 manager managing more than three teams. The most I've seen was probably three. And then at that point, they're pretty much ready to get to the next level. Obviously, if they're doing their part to get to the next level, but typically a manager with that number of teams is an L7 manager. And L7, on an individual contributor, it could be a principal engineer and then or a senior manager on the management track. They're obviously industry leaders, have a lot of experience, and the expectations are also very, very high. The L7 managers, sometimes they manage a single team, in rare cases, with the goal of obviously growing that team, or maybe it's an R&D team, and for them, they have a highly specialized area, and they continue to manage that for a prolonged periods of time. But typically, L7 managers manage roughly between 40 to 60 individuals. There's outliers, obviously, in each direction. And then L8 is either a senior principal engineer, and those are, again, very well-recognized industry leaders who have done some major contributions to the entire industry in whatever space they're working on, and very well-known individuals. And then on the management track, those are directors of engineering. They're typically managing teams anywhere from 80 to 200 engineers. An L8 manager from Amazon, typically when they go to a startup, they get a CTO position, or if they go to, let's say, like a Salesforce, which has a slightly inflated titles, they would get a VP or an SVP role at Salesforce. Again, it's the role has very, very high expectations. Those leaders typically do their own all hands. They set directions for the team. They manage a very large space in an area. Like, for example, at FBA, when I was there, an L8 director was managing an international team of probably like 250 engineers from all over the world, China, Europe, United States, Canada, I think even some in Australia. And the responsibilities included running a business that was generating, back then, about 35 to 40 billion dollars in sales. So, yeah, high expectations. Typically, those individuals are CTOs at smaller companies, or SVP of engineering at maybe medium size or some larger companies. All right, moving on. And as you can see here, their base doesn't go up as much here, but their stock compensation, as you'll see further in the slides, goes up quite a bit. All right. And just to kind of highlight here, so I am using um, this website called levels.fyi just to make sure that my information is still relatively fresh. So this website um, mines the work visa submissions and some other data sources to get the most relevant numbers for each of the roles. And so here I pulled up Google, Facebook, and Amazon. As you can see, the SD2, which is kind of like a mid-level engineer at Amazon, level 5. You can see that their median salary here is 172, and their stock grants are about 100K. So their total compensation is about 280, which is which is a lot of money for a mid-level engineer. So someone who has maybe like 5 years experience, 5, 6, etc. So those are not senior engineers. The senior engineers start at L6. And keep in mind, in a lot of companies, a senior engineer from like a smaller or non-tech company would probably come in as an SD2 at Amazon because of very, very high expectations from each of the levels. All right, so going into the typical base increases, I just want to talk a little bit about that. So once you get a base increase, what is the expectation of when that base is going to change? The base doesn't change quite a bit at Amazon. They're usually favoring more of giving you more stock grants as you get more promotions or as you perform really well, they would just give you stock grants as opposed to base increase. It grows very, very slow. In fact, after the first year, you probably shouldn't expect any base increases. In rare occasions, they give a small increase, like 2%. But again, it depends on departments and company allocations for that cash or base increases. They use formulas. Everything is very much formulaic in terms of compensation. They set the budget for the departments or for whatever area, and then kind of breaks it up from there. For the second year, you could expect a merit-based increase. Again, it's going to be very, very small, 3 to 5% for a very good performance. And that's very normal. So don't expect a lot to get from your base compensation. Promotions usually give you a higher bump, especially if you come in at a lower base when you got hired, or if the target compensation for that level had changed, increased, for example, you might get a higher bump during the promotion. So I've seen anywhere from 8% to 15% in my personal experience. 15% was for individuals who had very, very low base because they came in either a few years back when the base compensation was smaller, and since then have been adjusted by the entire company. And that's why they got a bigger bump, or they haven't negotiated a bigger base when they were getting their offer. And so their base was fairly small relative to the target compensation. So those individuals would get a bigger bump during the promotion. And again, for Amazon, the reason for that is in terms of stock compensations, like I said, they want to promote the ownership quite a bit within the company, and it's very heavily weighted for the merit. So individuals who perform just meeting expectations or almost meeting expectations don't really get a big bump in RSU, so they have a cliff at the end of their fourth year, and are naturally leaving the company for better opportunities, because Amazon doesn't really want to have those individuals within the company. But those who are consistently exceeding expectations or role model, they get bigger refresher grants, and they don't really have that 4-year cliff. Their compensation continues to grow, especially if they get promotions. And typically that motivates individuals to stay longer with the company. Even though it's very challenging to work for Amazon, a lot of people just don't survive past like the 4th year. A lot of people don't survive in the past the 2nd year, but still, like if your compensation is very high, if you had early stock grants and the stock value had appreciated significantly, you probably won't be able to find anything comparable anywhere outside, even like Google, Facebook, or whatever. They're not going to be able to match that compensation because of the stock appreciation. So anyway, so that's their philosophy. And then Amazon gets to keep those individuals who are hardworking and have massive contributions towards the success of the company. So in terms of the actual grants by level, they range quite a bit. There's a lot of variability there in terms of how well you're going to negotiate the offer. Keep in mind, they do have the target ranges for each of the level that they try to prevent from exceeding. But if the team really liked you, the recruiter may say, well, we are at the maximum. You can still politely, and in all those conversations, make sure that you have very polite conversations and discussions. You can express your excitement for the team, for the product, and say, I would like to put a lot more hours, and I'm really excited about the team. And it looks like the team is also excited to see me on board. Would like for the offer to be a lot more attractive, etc. Especially if you have competing offers, you have more leverage. It's very possible. So the hiring manager can go and ask for an exception from a VP. If VP signs off an exception, you can get additional bump, even the above whatever the target range is. So not a huge bump, but it could be like 5-10% more. So, or depending on the role and level, so those numbers can be very different. But yeah, the VP can sign the exception. I've seen that happen quite a few times for individuals who we really wanted to be on the team, who really did fantastic during the interviews, who had the right expertise that we were looking for, and it was hard to find for us that particular individual. And we would put the justification for exception to the offer, to the target ranges, and the VP would usually approve it. So anyway, so that's the that's how the system works there. In terms of the actual grants, at the L5, you should probably see like 40 to 70% of the base in terms of your RSU grants, the restricted stock units. At L6, it goes up to 100%, which means like if your base is 180, you can get another 180 in RSU grants. So which is great. And again, this is for just whatever you would expect for to be paid each year, the actual grants. It could be a lot higher. So keep in mind, the grants are given for the 4-year period, and the vesting schedule is usually 5% after the first year, 15% after the second year, and then 20% every 6th year. So when you look at your annual compensation, this is what you have to kind of look at. And then for the first 2 years, that's where your signing bonus comes in. That the recruiter will try to compensate for a much lower RSU vesting in the first 2 years with a signing bonus. So your signing bonus, you can negotiate to be in those similar ranges, right? So if your base is 180 and you're getting an offer for an L6, you can ask for another 180 as a signing bonus. It's going to obviously get divided up in equal installments and get paid with the regular paycheck. So, and then your RSU vesting kicks in, and at that point, the signing bonus starts to go down, but your compensation is not going to change. The total compensation is not going to change. And then L8s get really, really high RSU grants. But again, it depends on the specific area and their expertise. Sometimes they bring in individuals for whom they have really high expectations to transform something or build something or start something from scratch, and they will have really high performance-based compensation. And so those numbers are going to be very, very different. So their base doesn't change as much. And LA can still have a base of like 200 or 220. It's a little bit higher right now, probably like 250, but the point is majority of their compensation is in stocks. So, and so if we look at the L8 here on this website, which is levels.fyi, yeah, the L8 total compensation could be around $900 to $1 million per year. So, all right, moving on. Yeah, again, I did talk about the vesting schedule for the RSUs. 5%, typically 5% after the first year. After the second year, I have it 10%, now it's 15%, and then 20% every 6 months after that. There is a cliff after the fourth year if your performance was meets or below in the previous years. And if your performance was consistently exceeding your role model, you would get refresher grants and high enough or big enough where you probably won't notice that cliff. All right. Yeah, so the refresher grants typically earn after the second year because the first year you still have your signing bonus, you have your initial RSU grants, and they don't really give the refreshers. But then based on your performance, they start giving very sizable refreshers, especially if you get promoted to the next level. So again, depends on your personal performance, total compensation target for that role and level, and the stock performance as well. So if the stock went up significantly, obviously you're not going to get as much. And if the stock depreciate, which does happen, depreciated over the last year, you'll get more units. And if the stock goes up after that, your compensation goes up as well. And then what they do is they do factor in the stock value at the current price when they're looking at your overall compensation, which is kind of like, well, I got it like 2 or 3 years ago. Just let's look at it at the time when I got it, not at the current prices. That would be nice, but no, they're always looking at the current stock price when they're trying to project your target compensation. All right. Yeah, the signing bonus, yeah, like I said earlier, could be matching 20% of your RSU grant for overall, with being paid in the first year, and then going down right after that. So expect kind of like 1/5 of that RSU grant. Could be, you know, one third, but roughly 1/4 or 1/5, roughly within that range. Um, and it's just to compensate for a lower vesting of the RSUs in the first and then the second year. All right. And then there's also retention bonus. It's very rare for individuals who worked on very specific systems, worked for a long time, and there is a retention bonus pool for those individuals if they decide to leave the company, the manager can offer additional cash for them to stick around for longer, and complete whatever they were working on, or do knowledge transfer, or just stay with the team, you know, and forget about that external offer altogether. All right, so relocation. So typically, a relocation assistance is offered when there is a little note on the job description saying that the relocation assistant is available. For L6 and above, it is usually the case. Very rare when it's not. And then for L5, it is a mix, right? So a lot of the times it's not available, and then depending on the criticality of the role, it could be available as well. But the assistance itself, even for L5, is just fantastic. It covers your air travel, visit to the target city or destination city where you're planning to move to, pays for all your family, independence, all the tickets, all the meals during the travel days. It gives you a rental car for a week or two while your car is in transit. If you're shipping your car, it pays for shipping your cars. It pays for shipping all your furniture, and gives you at least a month of rental in one of the corporate housing. So, which is fantastic. And obviously, as you go up in level, so those perks are, the budget is higher. So, in my experience, when I was moving as an L5 back in the days, I think it was 2014, 10 years ago, um, to Seattle, and it was not an offer, it was just a relocation to a different area. So I was already with the company. Um, they paid for my relocation before that, and then they relocated me again. So they placed me and my family into one of the apartment buildings, like 26-story high on the top floor, like 3-bedroom penthouse essentially. And I lived there for months with my family until I found a good rental. So, which was fantastic experience. Um, yeah, and um, with relocation, really, what they used to have, I don't know if we still have it, every 2 years, the company can pay for your full relocation, assuming you find, and there's a business justification. Let's say you found another role that has a relocation assistance, or um, the company or the manager wants you to move to a different location to start a team, etc. So there is got to be a business justification, obviously, but every 2 years they can sponsor the entire move for you and pay all the expenses. And obviously, as you get to like L7, L8, it's completely like white glove experience relocation. So the budget is much higher. Um, if we're looking at the budget back a few years ago, like an L5 moving budget would be like, let's say 30,000. An L6 would be like 50,000. And then an L8 would be like 100 plus thousand. So a lot, a higher budget, and yeah, a much better service. All right, so that's it in terms of what I wanted to share on the compensation. Again, take a look at levels.fyi. It has a lot of details. You can pick different roles, different companies, and look at the actual numbers here. They do show medians, so they don't really break it down by the different regions, whether it's premium location, non-premium, etc. So those numbers can be skewed. Obviously, in the California Bay Area, those numbers are going to be way higher. And then in some other areas, let's say Oregon, Portland, Oregon, they're going to be a lower. So depending on the cost of living for that target location. Um, let's see. Let's take a look, let's say, at so we looked at engineers. And again, so they're roughly going to be very similar. The Facebook has different components to the offer. They usually offer more cash, which is higher base, higher cash bonus. Again, merit based, so you have to perform really well to get your bonus, and then a little bit lower on the stock side. But total compensation is still very high. Like for E5, for example, here, it is comparable to a senior engineer at Amazon. And then like E6 is almost like a principal engineer at Facebook, or getting to the principal. Facebook doesn't have those titles. It's just software engineer all the way through. But you can kind of see in terms of expectations and in terms of how much they're paying. So like at E6, you already pushing like over $500,000 in terms of compensation for the year. Yeah, similar to Amazon. The expectations, I would say, at L7 at Amazon are probably higher. So you have to work harder and take more responsibilities at Amazon for that kind of compensation. And it's going to be probably a lot more fun, to be honest. But still. And then as you push towards even sort of higher, like E7 at Amazon, yeah, those are, again, very high expectations. They get industry leaders in those roles. This is probably California Bay Area salary here. That's where most of those individuals are. And that's why the number is quite high there. The stock compensation, again, is quite high, as well as 3 times the base. And that's what you would see. The higher you go up in the level, the more there's going to be that performance component as opposed to fixed base, and the more it's going to be compensated in stock as opposed to just cash, because they want to incentivize individuals carrying and taking ownership for the company itself and the success of the entire company. Yeah, these numbers are probably outdated. A distinguished engineer at Amazon is very, very high. There's only like maybe 4 or 5 of them, at least when I was at Amazon, were very, very few of those individuals. And I'm pretty sure that their compensation doesn't even have the target ranges. It's probably negotiable, and it's very different from for all of them. All right. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this helps when you're negotiating your offers. Keep in mind that whatever you see can be negotiated up, even if the recruiter tells you that this is the maximum range. And if you convince them that you like them so much, and the team likes you after the interviews, they can go up and get an exception. So that's usually the process, and there is nothing to be afraid of in getting the exception. The manager is not going to be angrier. The only thing is, you just have to keep your word and work very hard, especially after getting above the maximum compensation, because after you getting the job, you don't want to end up in a situation where your compensation is much higher than your contributions are relative to other individuals. So just keep that in mind. All right, thanks for your time. Hope this helps, and good luck with your negotiations.